This Western Conference Finals Game 4 Betting Picks edition of the NBA Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times your entry with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up with the promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBA SGPN.
By the way, just quick thing, the music was playing for the start of that, so do you mind just redoing the Underdog read? And I'll just delete that in post.
Cool. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it when I was doing the countdown. All right, let's restart it. 3, 2, 1. This Western Conference Finals Game 4 Betting Picks edition of the NBA Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times your entry with the Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick and first-time deposit bonus offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBA SGPN. And we're also brought to you by the Mega Memorial Merch Sale, 15% off of everything in the SGPN merch store with promo code SGPN May. Welcome, everyone, to the NBA Gambling Podcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Tuesday, May the 28th. Currently 11:10 on the East Coast, here to get into Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. Game 4 as the Dallas Mavericks look to close out the series in sweeping fashion, heading to look their punch the ticket to the NBA Finals. We'll recap what we saw last night between the Celtics and the Pacers. And of course, we'll get into, like I mentioned, Game 4 for tonight. But joining me here to help me break everything down happening on the hardwood, I've got my guy here with me. It's Scott, Studio Reichel. Scott, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
Yeah, doing pretty well. Can't complain. Hopefully we have one series where both teams win a game. Hopefully. We got one last shot at it, but didn't exactly get that yesterday. Indiana had, I'd say, chances to go up potentially, like 3-1 in the series, and they got swept. So, we'll talk about that in addition to Game 3 of the Minnesota series. But point is, before we preview Game 4, But yeah, competitive game, was entertaining. I feel like we've seen the same script in that series 3 out of the 4 games, and it was the same thing last night because Indiana had a lead, and then they fell apart down the stretch. I believe they did not score for about the final 3.5 minutes. We're going to dive in a bit deeper, but yeah, competitive game. So as a fan, even though you might not have gotten the outcome you wanted for the team winning or losing, at least the game was competitive.
Yeah. I think an opportunity for the Pacers in, frankly, both games 3 and 4 to at least get one of those. I think more so is probably in Game 3, we can say, where they did have a 15-plus point lead. I think they were almost
game 1 was the best chance, but still.
Yeah, that one as well. So, I mean, this could be a different conversation right now instead of it being a sweep for the Boston Celtics, as we did see last night. So we can get into that here. 105-102 last night for the Celtics. They held the Pacers scoreless in the final 3 minutes and change. Derek White hits a huge clutch three-pointer to put the Boston Celtics ahead by 3, and the rest of it was pretty much sealed there for the Indiana Pacers. And again, the opportunities were there for the Pacers, not only throughout the game, but in fact, we mentioned, all throughout the series for this Pacers team. And they maybe we're playing with a little bit of a house money because, like the Boston Celtics, they also face teams that were dealing with injuries. But again, you just play who's in front of you, and they took care of business and took advantage of those teams that had the injuries. But this is going to be a fun team to watch in the future. I mean, I know they were a cash cow during the regular season when we talked about totals for this team. 3 out of the 4 games did go over the total, and Indiana, I feel like maybe just kind of ran out of a little bit of gas. But give credit to Boston. They did, get put their defensive clamps down, I guess we can say, and made things difficult down the stretch for the Indiana Pacers. And I think at the point where when I saw the Pacers late in that fourth quarter, Scott, when they slowed it down and you were relying on TJ McConnell to hit his little mid-range jump shots and they just weren't falling at that point, you just kind of knew that Boston was going to be able to take advantage of that and get buckets because, again, they have frankly 3 to 4, maybe even 5 guys that can knock down 3-point shots for you, but also can create their own shot. But lo and behold, they got it done last night. They're punching their ticket to the NBA Finals, and the Boston Celtics, as the favorites in the Eastern Conference, are the Eastern Conference Finals, or sorry, are the Eastern Conference champions. And we saw Jaylen Brown take home MVP honors for the Eastern Conference Finals as well. But were any takeaways from last night?
Takeaways were my takeaways from game 1 and game 3. Indiana's a really dumb basketball team. I feel like when we talk about teams that play at a certain pace and they try to pride themselves on using pace to their advantage, they just are very open to generating fast break chances, trying to break down a defense with their overall pace. Leave yourself vulnerable to a lot of mistakes. Even Golden State, when they won a bunch of championships, the main issue for that team was turnovers. And it felt like Indiana down the stretch was just constantly shooting themselves in the foot in every game. They were making dumb shots. They were taking dumb shots. They lost containment on multiple defensive possessions. They also ended up just having a lot of lackluster possessions, either based on turnovers or based on just a lot of scrambling. And I feel like when teams play with a certain free-flowing nature, in crunch time, when teams defensively buckle down, offensively, you're going to have some trouble because you don't exactly have much discipline. And the Pacers had no discipline, and it felt like they just, once again, were unable to consistently generate good looks down the stretch. They scored 19 points into the fourth quarter. I said before they didn't score for about the final 3.5 minutes of that game. But just going down the line for the last couple of possessions, Siakam was pretty solid early in that fourth quarter, and then he barely touched the ball again for the final couple minutes. And it felt like Nembhard, who was phenomenal for most of the game, had about a 1-minute stretch that lost in the game. And to actually read off the moment there, trying to find it. So at the 129 mark, Nembhard gets a rebound at 135, dribbles down court by himself into a 1-on-3 and gets pickpocketed. So that was one possession. That was a tie game, by the way, when that happened. Then they go down the line, and you see the Celtics actually miss a couple of shots. But then you get Nembhard turning getting a shot blocked by Brown with, I believe, what was it, like 17 seconds on the shot clock? And then he misses a 3 with 33 seconds left. So Nembhard was great, but he was awful for about a minute, and that blew them the game. But the two possessions I'm going to mention were the Nembhard possessions because he got a rebound at 135. He dribbled down court into a 1-on-3 and turned the ball over. So with 135 to go, you take 6 seconds off the shot clock to dribble into a 1-on-3 and turn it over. Then the next possession where he gets blocked, where he didn't really have a chance at it, there was a rebound with 12 seconds left, or with 1:12 left in the quarter. They took a timeout, and then about 3 or 4 seconds after the timeout, Nembhard gets a shot blocked. So he had 2 straight possessions where they took off basically like 10 seconds combined off the shot clock in a tie game, and they ended up not getting any quality looks at the basket. It just felt like Indiana was constantly going at 100 miles an hour, and they were just trying to generate quick offense the entire time, and it just felt like they weren't reading the room properly. Nembhard especially was trying to force the issue when he had double-digit seconds on the shot clock and back-to-back possessions. It kind of drove me nuts. But we saw it the entire quarter.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about generally like not pulling back the curtain, but like zooming out a little bit, like you take a look at Minnesota and Indiana in particular, I think that the teams that have had success like Boston and Dallas is because they have closers, right? They have guys that have been in that moment where they can create their own shot, get to the basket, and at least get a decent looking shot off. And I think that's what's been really a downfall for this Pacers team, because the games that they did win, Scott, like in the first 2 rounds, were in blowout fashion, I want to say, for most of those games. So they didn't, when this came down to those clutch moments, I think that's where you saw the separation for a lot of these teams, especially young teams like the Indiana Pacers, where they just didn't have that playoff experience. And it cost them, a couple games. We saw it in game 1. I think that was really telling that they were up in that game, coming off of a game 7.
You inbound the ball, you win.
Yeah, you inbound the basketball, you get fouled, knock down at least 1 or 2 free throws, and you win game 1. So, yeah, I think that maybe if they had Hallie out there, that might be a different situation as well. But I think for this Pacers team, like, there's things that they need to fix, like you mentioned, right? Late game execution, whether that's on Rick Carlisle or whether that is on some of the players. But I think this Indiana Pacers team, I don't want to say we'll be back in the Eastern Conference Finals next year. Still think they need to make some moves on the roster. But yeah, I think late game execution at this point of the season, it's very crucial. And we've seen the separation where Boston's been able to do and what Dallas has been able to do. And that's why Boston is now going to the NBA Finals and Indiana's not. And right now, that's why Dallas is up 3-0. And Minnesota hasn't won a game yet in this series. So, yeah, I did expect the Celtics to win last night. I would have thought they would have done it in blowout fashion. But you got to give the Indiana Pacers credit for at least fighting in their 2 home games, especially without Tyrese Halliburton. So live and you learn, right? And I think that Boston, clearly was the better team, and they swept them, and they're headed to the NBA Finals. I really didn't think much of it last night, honestly.
Yeah, I wasn't just only trying to pile on Nembhard because he was great objectively for most of that game, but I feel like it was a great summary of the issues I've had with the Pacers, which was just a minute of out-of-control, careless basketball, and that kind of just sums up the issues the Pacers had down the stretch. And Halliburton was out. You are right that even though Halliburton was out, the Pacers did a great job of not rolling over, of giving themselves great opportunities to potentially win both home games without their arguably best player. So I am going to give them props for at least putting together a good effort. But damn, man, I can't stand Rick Carlisle. I mean, I know that some of it's the player issues because they haven't been there before, and sometimes the nerves get there. Siakam has; he's won a title. But the point is, just going down the line for all these games, it felt like either Carlisle was too late to make substitutions or adjustments, or too oblivious to make adjustments, because there were a couple of possessions, even defensively, where I ended up seeing Obi Toppin make a really nice baseline pass to Siakam for a layup. It kind of looked like he was falling out of bounds. He made a nice one-handed pass, and Siakam got a layup out of it. Toppin got torched on a couple of possessions back-to-back, and Carlisle just didn't do anything. They were isolating everybody on top and down the stretch, and they were just getting free runs to the rim. At about the 5-minute mark, Tatum was dancing on Toppin, and then he got I'm sorry, to go through the line here, 1:54 left. So Holiday gets an and one layup, a pretty dumb foul, but either way. Next possession down, Tatum enters for Tillman. He isolates on Toppin, gets a free dunk. He completely had Toppin on skates, free run to the rim, gets a dunk. Next possession, Jaylen Brown says, my turn, and he ends up going right at Toppin, and he gets a free shot in the paint. And it just felt like Toppin was a liability defensively down the stretch, and they just didn't really make any adjustments to it until it was kind of too late, because they gave away 4 free points of just watching them just completely pick apart Toppin defensively. Then they took him out, and then we've seen some issues offensively as well with the Pacers, where it seems like they try to do the same thing over and over again, and it doesn't work, and there's really no plan Bs. But I thought Carlisle had an objectively speaking, an abysmal series. I thought he was awful the entire way through. I thought he snatched, I'm trying to think. I'm going to butcher this saying. He snatched victory away, or what, you know what I'm trying to say. It's the reverse of what you usually get. He found a way to lose 3 games that they should have won.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. I thought he was objectively terrible in the entire series.
Yeah, I thought that
some of it was a talent disparity. Like, I'm aware that Boston's the more talented team, but when Missoula's going to outcoach you for about, I don't know, 3 separate crunch times, and we know Missoula barely does anything.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty telling. Carlisle is a coach that, yes, he won a title, and yes, he made a conference final with this roster, an Indiana team that was mid-series, that was the middle of the seedings entering the postseason. But I think we'd agree the Eastern Conference was down. Milwaukee was injured. The Knicks ran out of gas. They were also injured. I'd be shocked if we saw Indiana here with Rick Carlisle anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that, again, we talked a lot about how injuries were on the side, or I should say that Indiana relatively was, and Boston was the healthier teams coming into the Eastern Conference Finals, right? And this would be a different conversation, or maybe a different matchup, we should say, in the Eastern Conference Finals if teams were healthy. But it is what it is. I mean, at this point, right, you play 82-game season, you're going to have those injuries to these guys. I think the unfortunate part now going forward for us as fans is we're probably going to see a lot more quote-unquote load management and injury management towards the end of the season to make sure these guys are healthy to play um, in the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, look, give credit to Boston. They got it done. And again, like you mentioned, give also credit to Indiana for not rolling over at home in game 3 and 4 after, taking the losses in games 1 and 2. So, Boston at least will represent the East. And it looks like more than likely it will be Dallas for the Western Conference. But they are up 3-0, still need one more game to wrap it up to
Yeah,
punch their ticket.
just one quick thing
Go
that I
ahead.
was going to
Yeah.
say. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but just to
Sure.
go through what I think is going to happen with this Pacers team in the future. My concern is that they're going to get complacent because Mathurin was out. They're missing maybe a player or two, but they made a deep run, and now they're just going to assume that this current group is good enough to get over the hump. It's not. I don't think this team's good enough to get over the hump. I think the Eastern Conference was pretty weak this year. We're expecting some improvement. Maybe you can disagree with me because they play at a certain brand of basketball and a certain pace that can give other teams problems. But I personally think a couple years down the road that they don't like the Hawks. I think that they were basically the same team that the Hawks were when they made the Eastern Conference Finals and got smacked in that series. And then that kind of ended up hurting the franchise because they thought they were further along than they actually were. And my concern is they're going to get complacent and they're not going to do much. I think there are a lot of upgrades that can be made to this roster if they really want to make that next leap. And I'm not sure they're going to do it.
And I was thinking about this last night when the game had wrapped up, and I said to myself, if they add a type of player like a Paul George, DeMar DeRozan type, and if the financials work out and they add that type of scorer, do you think that cements them as at least a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference?
We'd have to once again wait to see what teams do in the offseason. Boston would probably be one for now because of just the overall roster depth. Milwaukee has, Doc Rivers, somebody takes him seriously, but Giannis, if he's healthy, is always a threat. You got to at least mention him. Same with Embiid, I guess. I know that Embiid's playoff numbers, or at least success over the years, is non-existent because he's injured all the time and they end up losing. But I think Philly would definitely have given Indiana a run for their money in a playoff series because Embiid is a matchup problem and Max is a matchup problem too. It's difficult to fully evaluate like where these teams would then potentially stack up against the Pacers if fully healthy. I think most people probably would have taken the Knicks over the Pacers if Anunoby didn't get hurt and if Randall was playing for the series. So it's a lot of what ifs. That's the problem you run into when half the damn league gets injured basically in the Eastern Conference. But I feel like the Pacers will look at themselves saying we got second place. Like we are definitely a threat to make the finals next year just by getting a couple pieces back. And I personally believe that they're not. I think that they were pretty fortunate and they got a favorable draw. And now I hope they're not disillusioned into thinking that they are going to be a serious threat to make a title run with this current core because I really don't think they are. I'd say they have a couple of pieces that might be available to help with a championship core. But I think right now, they still need to upgrade at some spots, and I feel like they're not going to do that.
Yeah, and that's something that they definitely are going to have to do because, again, at full strength, you mentioned the teams in the East. I know we'll have a bigger conversation in the offseason once the NBA Finals wrap up, but I think for Indiana, they need to add that another bona fide score because they do have you have Hallie at the point guard. Miles Turner was absolutely incredible, I think, in this series in particular. Mathurin was hurt all series long and all playoffs long.
Turned into a good 3-and-D guy.
Yeah, and I think that maybe if they put him in the starting lineup or in the coming off of the bench, that first guy coming off the bench, I think he's going to be fantastic for this team. But yeah, we'll talk more about that in the offseason for the Indiana Pacers. But at least for right now, the Boston Celtics are headed to the NBA Finals after sweeping.
Just to be clear, I'm not trying to roast the Pacers. I'm not trying to rain on the parade. Like they overachieved based on what people thought they were going to do for this season. But I'm once again trying to play devil's advocate, or at least trying to warn people that just because you get to the conference finals does not mean you're actually close to getting over the hump. I feel like a lot went right for Indiana, and now I'm concerned the front office thinks that this is the new norm as opposed to doing whatever they can to increase the probability of them getting over the hump. And I'm a bit concerned about that, but we'll see. That's an off-season conversation.
Yep. All right. Before we get into game 4 here for tonight, the college baseball tournament starts Friday, and Noah Beanick has you covered with the College Baseball Experience Daily Picks Pod for the regional previews and much more. So make sure you guys tune in and check out the college baseball tournament that starts on Friday. and over on the college baseball experience with Noah. Plus, we're running a mega Memorial Day merch sale, 15% off of everything in the merch store. Make sure that promo code SGPN May to get that 15% off. Also, our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Hey, we are itching ever so closer to the NBA Finals. Now, our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, wants to make a lot more interesting. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your other favorite sports, and you can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. New customers get a pick'em special in the lobby when they do sign up, and Underdog will be running a ton of different promos, bonus cash airdrop specials, giveaways, and more throughout the NBA playoffs. So make sure to follow @Underdog Picks on Twitter to keep an eye out. Underdog is available in 30 plus states, including California, Texas, and Canada. They also just launched Champions, their player versus player format in Florida. Sign up with promo code NBA SGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure that promo code NBA SGPN. All right, Scott, game 4 tonight of the Western Conference Finals between the Timberwolves and the Mavericks. As it stands right now, the Mavs are a 2-point home favorite with a total of 210.5. We will not have Derek Lively in this game. He did suffer a neck sprain. I think it's more precaution that they're going to keep him out in this game. So no Derek Lively for the Dallas Mavericks. Did see a note that Maxi Kleber may be coming back for this game, or is at least clear to play. We'll see if he's out there or not for this Dallas Mavericks team. But right now, Dallas has a commanding 3-0 lead. They are looking to also close it out here tonight on their home floor against the Minnesota Timberwolves here. We will mention that Scott Foster is on the game here tonight, but two seems a little fishy to me, Scott. But what are your thoughts on this game for tonight?
Well, I do want to ask you, because even though Lively is technically a bench player, has he been Dallas' third best player in the series?
Absolutely.
So
no question.
I think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because Gafford has had a couple moments and a couple highlights. The crazy scoop layup. He had the dunk on Gobert. Lively's been better than Gafford, and I don't think it's close. His activity's been really, really just incredible. And I have to at least give him the flowers that he deserves for that. But with him being out, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I don't think Gafford's had that great of a series, and people might remember some, once again, highlights and convince themselves that he's been quite impactful. He really hasn't. I think that it's actually a big deal that Lively's going to be out. I'm not sure how many points you think Lively's actually worth. He might be worth a point or so. I think he's been that good in the series. And when you have to deal with Naz Reid and you look at the overall front court depth that the Timberwolves possess, I know Cat and Gobert have not been good in the series, but at least they have bodies that you can throw at other teams. Lively being out's a big deal. And Gafford, to go through his numbers this series, he's had a couple of good games, but he had 10-9 in game 1. He had 16-5 in game 2, but he only had 5-3 in game 1. Did have 8 blocks in the last 2 games combined. So rim protection-wise has been solid. I think Lively's been better, but the point is now that he's out and Kleber, I don't think, is officially back. They have some serious front court depth issues, and Minnesota's a team you don't want to have those issues with, or I should say against, when you're kind of battling to potentially close out a series. Scott Foster is on the game, and I know I'm not a big conspiracy guy, probably not as much as other hosts of this show, but I definitely think the NBA does not want to have about 2-3 weeks off before the NBA Finals. I really think that 2 sweeps in the conference finals is a doomsday scenario for the NBA. I think that matters. I got to bring it up. The spread's low, and we've seen Minnesota, even though they are 0-3 in the series, they've been competitive. Every game's been decided by single digits. Game 3 wasn't as competitive as the first 2 games. But when you lose game 1 and game 2 by a combined 4 points, these teams aren't as far off as this, overall series looks based on from, just overall, I'd say, game by game basis compared to the looking at basically a box score or a bracket going, 3-0, Dallas is clearly better than this team. They're really not. These teams are closer than you might want to at least admit. And even though I do think Dallas will win the series, and Minnesota's been really bad at closing games out, especially games 1 and 2, we just talked about it for Indiana. Indiana should arguably be up 3-1. They got swept. You're looking at Minnesota. They should arguably be up 2-1 based on how the first 2 games went in the series. So I'm actually going to go with Minnesota. I think that this line is low for a good reason. I think Lively's absence will be felt, and I do think that Minnesota, I'm not even going to talk about the quotes of Anthony Edwards saying, I think that we, are going to beat this team, and Naz Reid kind of feeling the same way. I'm not going to read into that. It's good that they have confidence despite being down 0-3. It's never been done before. We saw them come back in Game 7 down 20 against Denver on the road. They've been able to make some impressive comebacks in the postseason so far, but in reality, I think that this line is short for a reason. I think most people will blindly take Dallas. They're going to expect Minnesota to roll over. Is there a chance Dallas gets complacent? We're up 3-0. We got it in our back pocket. What are we worried about? And maybe Minnesota punches them in the mouth. Maybe we get that. So I like Minnesota, actually, in the spot.
Yeah, I think that for the series, it's been down to those clutch moments where Luka and Kyrie have been better. But you're right that when it's this team, these two teams, I think, have been evenly matched. But when it's come down to those clutch times with like 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left, that Dallas has been better in those spots because they had two guys that can close out games. And Anthony Edwards has been abysmal, at least shooting wise, in this series thus far. And I think that game 3, I think, was really telling, where they only scored one basket in the final 5 minutes of that game, which was
Even
a
that
meaningless
game was close. PJ Washington hit that 3-pointer in the corner because Anthony Edwards just zoned out defensively, but that was a tie game too with a couple minutes to go.
Yeah, and they also went scoreless in that span. I mean, look, from I think it was like 5:05 left. I went back and looked at the play-by-play. They had a basket. I think it was Ant. Got 2 points there, but then their next basket didn't come till 15 seconds left in the game. At that point, the game was out of hand. It was a meaningless layup by Anthony Edwards. So when it comes down to clutch time, you need your best player to rise to the occasion. I think Anthony Edwards hasn't been able to do that. But this line is a little telling, right? I think -2 seems a little bit fishy to me. At the same time, can I trust Minnesota in the clutch moments when it comes down to it in the fourth quarter? If it is a close game, I'm not sure, but they've been pretty good coming out of the gate. They've been good and competitive in the first half. So I think I would look at Minnesota in the first half in this game. But yeah, I think at -2, where money has coming on the Timberwolves here, is a little bit telling to me, because I want to say this number opened up at 2.5. If I'm mistaken, now it's down to 2 here for this game.
I don't know if you believe in the sharp money kind of, how that entire thing works.
Yeah.
They never really know. It's all hindsight based anyway. I mean, people are called sharp money, but if they lose by 20, then they look like idiots. So I think we'd agree the public will be betting on Dallas. And the fact that the line has dropped half a point, I do think is telling that there's some type of alleged sharp square divide here.
Yeah, and again, when the general public will look at it, like, wow, Dallas is up 3-0. They're only a 2-point favorite at home. Yeah, let's go bet that. Let's go bet Dallas. Let's go bet them on the money line. This should be easy money. I think that's what they're thinking here. But yeah, so I'm on Minnesota first half here. I think they do come out, and like you mentioned, what Anthony Edwards said, what Naz Reid said. Naz Reid has been pretty good. I mean, I don't want to say pretty good. He's been great in this series, especially on the road here.
What are they
for
supposed
the Dallas
to say?
Mavericks?
We're down 3-0. I got my bags packed already. Like, no, they're supposed to say we're going to win the game. So I have a hard time with people that criticize players for these quotes of like, we're going to win. What are you supposed to say? Like, of course they think they're going to win. It's good that they feel that way. So I also want to point out quickly, sorry to interrupt.
No.
I want to shout out Prince of Picks. Yes, I exaggerated. It is not 3 weeks off. It's 8 days.
It'll feel like 3 weeks.
It's a full week of no basketball. The NBA cannot have that happen. If you want to go for the conspiracy angle, which I don't typically buy into, there's a lot of actual reason. There are a lot of reasons to actually like Minnesota in this game, even though they're down 3-0, because all 3 games have been very, very close. And Minnesota has fumbled away a lot of good opportunities to be up in this series. But I think Lively's absence is massive. And I feel like people aren't fully acknowledging just how impactful he's been. I think he has been the 3rd best player for Dallas in this series.
Yeah, 100%. I want to say that after he left the game in game 3, they were attacking the basket a lot more. Even Naz Reid was able to get the rim, get some easy baskets. I would expect Anthony Edwards to attack the basket here tonight. Don't be surprised if you see Gafford, who's traditionally been a guy that's been in foul trouble, get into early foul trouble, and there's no much rim protection after that for this Dallas Mavericks team. And they're able to, is Minnesota going to be able to attack the basket and get easy shots around the rim and maybe play with the lead in this game here. So I think that's something I'm going to be looking out for here tonight in this game here. Total sitting at 210.5 here, Scott. But all three games have gone over the total. Scott Foster has more of a friendly whistle, I should say, in this game, or throughout the playoffs, I should say. But what are your thoughts on the total here at 210.5?
I think I'm going to go with the over. We've seen pretty competitive games, and we have seen the last couple of games fly over. In fact, every game in the series has gone over. So
Yeah.
we were expecting a lower scoring series. We haven't gotten that. I don't mind the over in this one. Now, Lively has been able to actually generate some offense for either the second unit or the first unit when he does get subbed in for Gafford. So there is going to be a step back. If we are talking about potentially Dwight Powell getting minutes, which is probably not a good sign for Dallas, which can affect the offense, but I think I'm going to lean over in this game. We've already seen 3 overs. I feel like the odds makers have been a bit slow to adjust the totals, and maybe get an overtime draw as well because all these games have been close. But I'm going to lean over in this one.
Yeah, I think that Wolves team total over is something I would be definitely on here tonight. I think they've gone. I want to say they've been going over their team total in all 3 games as well. But again, it's just coming down to those clutch moments where it's just been that difference. It's been that simple. That Luka and Kyrie have been better, and it keeps banging on the same drum, but that's just what it is right now. And I think until somebody from Minnesota does step up or is able to knock down a clutch shot, hopefully it is Anthony Edwards, your best player. That's just what it is right now. All right, Scott, before we do get to the player props, excuse me, in this game between the Mavericks and the Wolves here for tonight, let me tell everyone about the newest sponsor here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. That is a Rhythm. And if you're betting on NBA player props like we are, then you need to download Rhythm. Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA playoff game, making it easy to go through and find the best props to put your money on in seconds. Rhythm's predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning our algorithm to give you the best shot at winning. Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs to help feel even more confident in your picks, which you can make wherever you normally place your bets or DFS picks as well. From superstars to bench players, Rhythm finds the best player prop lines, all backed by AI data, without you needing to endlessly scroll through a sportsbook. Rhythm also allows you to create your own custom NBA models so you can get AI-backed moneyline, spread, and total picks for every playoff game. Start a free 7-day trial and start winning your NBA player props with Rhythm. Available wherever you do get your apps. All right, Scott, let's get into player props here for tonight, man. What are you looking at?
For player props in this game, my question for you to start off with Gafford.
Yeah.
Does he get more run? Does he end up in foul trouble? What's your pick for Gafford in this game? Because with Lively being out, I kind of wanted to start there.
Well, he is going to have to get more run. I think he will be the starter here tonight, but my gut tells me he's going to be in foul trouble.
I personally think that he's going to be in foul trouble in this game, so we'll see what happens. But if you want to go for Gafford props, I don't mind blocks, though. Once again, he's had 8 blocks in the last 2 games combined. So he has been very good at actual rim protection. And if you do think he's going to get more minutes, foul trouble, assuming that doesn't actually present itself, then I think Gafford blocks could be worth a look in this game. Most people are going to expect Luka and Kyrie to have big games, which is probably the script you're going for if you're picking Dallas to win. If you're picking Minnesota to win, then I do think you're going to look for Ant. I don't mind RA. He had 18 RA last game. It's actually been a pretty solid angle for him in the series so far. We saw him say he was going to take more shots in game 3. He did early, and then late, he kind of seemed like he was deferring again. But either way, I don't mind Ant potentially assists in this game, or maybe if you want to throw in rebounds too. But I do think Minnesota on the board should have a lot of success in this game with Lively being out. I'm not a big Dwight Powell guy, and he might be in line to get some extra minutes. So if you want to go for rebounds, maybe you want to go for Cat or Ant. You have a couple options, but I think rebounding props might be worth a look for Minnesota.
Yeah. I don't trust Rudy Gobert to give me the rebounds. We've had that conversation throughout the season. I mean, again, I feel like if you're going to go down swinging, it has to be with your best player, Anthony Edwards. I think PRA could be a look here. I mean, you mentioned the RA for him. It's at 12.5. I just think this is the performance that you're going to need out of Anthony Edwards here tonight. They want to win this game. If we do think that Daniel Gafford will be in some type of foul trouble, or maybe his minutes aren't going to be there. I really do like PJ Washington, especially at home. He's been really good, at least knocking down the 3-point shot for the Dallas Mavericks. He's also done a pretty good job of rebounding. I know he hasn't done it much in this series. Did have 8 rebounds against in game 3, finished up with 16 points. But I think the opportunities for his rebounding are really going to be there tonight. I know the minutes are going to be there for him as well. He's averaging close to 40 minutes in the Western Conference Finals here. So PJ Washington points and rebounds is something I'm very, very intrigued by here tonight. That number is at, let's see, 19.5. Derek Jones Jr. rebounds has also been kind of sneaky. And I played this, I want to say it was either game 1 or game 2, where the number was at 3.5 at plus money, but that number has now been adjusted to minus 130 for Derek Jones Jr. He's been really good as well for this Mavericks team. So those are a couple that I was looking at. I think Naz Reid points, or his, if you want to look at his 3-pointers, I think that I couldn't talk you off of that. It is at at 1.5 at minus 135. He's done a great job over the last 2 games for this team, coming off of the bench and really providing some scoring support to a guy like Anthony Edwards. Last 3 games, I should say, in this series: 15 points, 23 points, 14 points, 3 of 6 from 3-point land in game 1, 7 of 9 in game 2. And then he was just 1 of 5 in game 3, but I do expect him to bounce back here tonight. Again, the minutes have significantly increased for him in this series compared to what he was really playing in the Denver Nuggets series. So those are the ones I was really looking at here, Scott. Anything else you like?
Yeah, I saw Brandon mentioning the rebounding prop for Naz Reid, which I do like. I see that line at 3.5. The price is actually pretty decent. It's 155, so it is a bit juicy, but I still don't mind it. You're looking at Reid's recent games, and he's kind of going under, but he has had rebounding chances. His minutes have gone up. He's played at least 29 minutes in each of the last 2 games, mostly because Gobert and Cat have been brutal in the series. Yeah. So Reid probably has been their best big man this series, just based on consistency. It's an elimination game. He really needs to get a bunch of minutes.
Yeah.
If you want to go for Reid points, I don't mind that either. At 12.5, it is juiced a bit over to minus 115. I don't mind that. He's had at least 14 in every game of the series. I don't mind rebounds, points and rebounds if you want to join the 2 together. Just try to find the actual price for that one. Points and rebounds are at 16.5 at minus 120. That I like. He really should play north of 30 minutes in this game. He's been that impactful for them. So, yeah, I don't mind Reid points and rebounds, or if you want to break it up, however you want to do it.
All right. Anything else for this game before we get to picks?
Yeah, if I'm picking Minnesota to win, maybe it's a hunch or not, then who do you think's more likely to disappoint, Kyrie or Luka? Because probably it's Kyrie, right? If we're picking who's going to be more likely to no-show a potential game, it probably would be Kyrie, right?
Yeah, I would think it'd be Kyrie, unless it's just like Luka has a really bad shooting night, which he hasn't had one. I don't remember the last time he had like a really bad shooting. I think you have to go back to the series early on against the.
Yeah, they keep switching Bear onto him. So
yeah,
he hasn't had a bad shooting night in a while. But
yeah, so.
I'm trying to think of any other props that I am tempted by for this game. I mean, Luka's PRA is massive. It's at 48.5. I can't really disagree with it, but I am a little bit tempted by the under. If I am going to pick Minnesota extra game, 48.5 is a massive PRA number. Like, if Luka goes over, they're probably winning.
Right? Yeah, because he's only gone over this number once in the series, which is actually
triple-double. That's basically what you're pricing him in for if you think he's going
over. So you might as well just play a triple double if you want to, if you like the over, but if you like the under, yeah, I couldn't talk you off of that.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. The rebounds for Luka's been underwhelming. He's had less than 8 rebounds in 2 of the 3 games in the series. Maybe that number goes up with Lively being out. The assists haven't been that great either. He's had less than 9 assists in 2 of the 3 games. So maybe if you want to go for Luka lower on the rebounds and assists, that could be worth a look. I know he had that monster game in the middle where he had 10 rebounds and 15 assists. But once again, all of my angles are kind of leaning towards Minnesota actually looking decent tonight and potentially winning the game. So if you do want to go for that angle, Luka's rebounds and assists, though, are at 18.5. He has had less than 15 in 2 of the 3 games here. Maybe that's worth a look. Maybe if you want to go for Luka under on the rebounds and assists.
All right, let's get into our lock and dog /prop for game 4 here tonight, and then we'll put together our underdog fantasy entry. Scott, you want to lead us off?
Sure. So for the lock on the show, I think I am actually going to go with the Naz Reid in some capacity. I think I am going to go with the points and rebounds for this game. I just think he's been that good for this team. And when you're looking at not just one big man, but both starting big men being extremely underwhelming, if Cat's not going to be able to hit jump shots, then what's the point?
Yeah.
I just feel like it's a spot where Cat, whether he claims he's the best shooting big of all time, all the jokes aside, if he's not going to be able to hit outside shots, then what exactly does he do for you? Defensively, he has been pretty good, but in general, Reid really should get a bunch of minutes in this game. So if you want to go for rebounds by itself, that's fine. It's at minus 155, so I'm not going to bother. If you do want to go for the points at 12.5, I don't mind that either. But give me both combined. I think Reid could really end up getting a pretty solid points and rebounds game. I think that he can, in one script, drop 15 points. Another script, maybe it gives you a solid amount of rebounds. But I do think that 16.5 for points and rebounds is actually kind of appealing. I'm going to take that as my lock on the show. I just think that it's a solid option. And
all right,
for my
and
dog, I
would get like a dog or a prop out.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I got to figure out what I want to do for the dog, because I might just buy into Minnesota. I really feel like the series has been a lot closer than people are making it out to be, because all 3 games have been basically a tie game with 3 minutes to go. All these games have been coin flips. Now, Dallas has been much better at actually closing the deal. I'm not going to pretend that they have not. That's why they're up 3-0. But I feel like people are trying to immediately assume that a sweep's a foregone conclusion. And I really just don't see that happening. I think Minnesota is going to give Dallas a great overall effort. And I think that Dallas maybe gets complacent. Who knows? Maybe in the back of their minds, they're already in the series. But I think the Lively injury is a big deal. I just have to quickly find which prop I want to actually go with for my dog. But it will involve Minnesota money line in some capacity. You want to go in the meantime while I pull it up?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it simple here tonight. I'm going to go Minnesota team total over 104.5. They've scored at least 105 in all 3 games, and it could be a lot more. But that fourth quarter through the first 3 games, they're only averaging 21 points. So I hope that they do a little bit better in the fourth quarter, because they are going to need to. But I think, again, both you and I agree that we do see a over in this game, or we do see points being put up. I think you'll get maybe some more free throw attempts, maybe free throw makes from this Minnesota team with Scott Foster there. He does have a friendlier whistle. So I do think that Minnesota offensively, through at least 3.5 quarters in the first 3 games, have been really good. And they have, again, scored at least 105 in all 3 games. So lock for me, team total over 104.5 for the Wolves. For my dog / prop, I think, again, it's going to have to be led by Anthony Edwards, and 30 plus points right now is at plus 145 for him. I know he hasn't done it in any game thus far in this series. In fact, he hasn't done it in, let's see, the last time he had a 44-point game was against Denver back in game 4. But since then, he hasn't been able to do it. But I think the difference here tonight, Scott, is what we talked about. No Derek Lively, so you lose some rim protection there. Gafford, I think, will also be in some foul trouble tonight. So that opens up the opportunity to attack the basket for a guy like Anthony Edwards. So I think, I'm going to take a fly here, and 30 plus points, plus 145 as my dog.
Yeah, I think my dog, I'm going to go with Minnesota halftime, full-time at plus 185. I just think at the end of the day, if I'm wrong about Minnesota, then I'm wrong. It is what it is. But the point is, I do think that based on where this line's located, maybe a little bit of conspiracy angle there with Scott Foster being the ref in this game and the amount of money that's coming on Minnesota for this matchup. But we've seen Minnesota get off to good starts, so we know that they're capable of kind of coming out with a solid effort. The issue's been the last 5 minutes. Yep. That's really the issue. But if we're talking about Minnesota being basically an even team with Dallas, or maybe even slightly better in the first 43 minutes of a game, then I do think that turning a plus 110 dog into plus 185, if you include the first half, is definitely worth consideration. So for me, I'm going to go with Minnesota halftime, full-time at plus 185. If Dallas sweeps them, it is what it is. But I do think Minnesota is capable of getting the job done for at least one game. Maybe Dallas is overlooking them a bit. We'll see what happens, but I do think Minnesota has some value, in my opinion, on the halftime full-time at plus 185.
All right. Let's get over to our Underdog Fantasy entry here for tonight. Again, if you haven't already signed up with Underdog Fantasy, I don't know what you're waiting for, but make sure you guys use that promo code NBA SGPN. You'll get a bonus cash offer up to $250 courtesy of Underdog Fantasy. All right, so we're both sold on Nas Reed here tonight here, Scott. So we'll start there. Points and rebounds 16.5, higher on that.
Sure.
All right, let's do that. Do you want to go back to the Kyrie first quarter under angle, or is that ship sailed?
I might have sailed at this point.
Okay.
Do we go for the hot take Luka lower on like rebounds and assists or points, rebounds and assists? I just feel like that line is massive. I know Luka is an incredible player. You can argue right now he's the second best player in the league. You can make that argument, but it's a massive number, isn't it?
Yeah, 48.5, especially when he's only done it once against his T-Wolves team. The assists just haven't been there. I think that's been what's really been holding him back because he's just has the matchup advantage on the offensive side. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's get a little contrarian here. We'll go lower than 48.5 PRA for Luka. And then where's our last one? I'm really tempted by like a cat under. Let's see. You want to do like Daniel?
You mentioned Derek Jones rebounds. If you wanted to consider that,
excuse me. Where is he? Let's find Derek Jones. Jaden, here he is. Derek Jones Jr. 3.5 rebounds higher than that. It is at 0.9, so I think we're still getting a good price here because at minus 130 over on DraftKings, so it gets us to around 5.4x here. Yeah, so let's roll with that. We'll go Nas Reed, higher 16.5 points and rebounds. We'll go Luka, 48.5 lower PRA, and then we'll go Derek Jones Jr., higher 3.5 rebounds here tonight. That $10 entry will get you a return of $54 if all three of those, in fact, do get to the window for us and cash. So again, go to underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code NBASGPN. And hopefully we are talking about a winner for our Underdog Fantasy entry for tonight for Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. All right, that's going to wrap it up here for this edition of the NBA Gambling Podcast. Scott, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
Nothing much. Even though I do have action on Minnesota for this game, action aside, please win a game, Minnesota. I can't handle 2 sweeps in the NBA playoffs and the conference finals.
We are going up against Kyrie's perfect 14-0 in closeout games with Scott Foster.
That is true.
There.
That is true. I am going to point out, though, Kyrie was not exactly at his best in the last closeout game, but they got it done anyway against Oklahoma City. But either way, yeah, it's 14-0. I do recognize that trend, but hopefully we do not get 2 sweeps. Hopefully.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to break out the Undertaker meme where with that the fan where he's has an absolutely shocked face if Minnesota does.
I'm just saying, Angel Hernandez ended up retiring from baseball. If Scott Foster can't force a Game 5 tonight, he might have to start, preparing his life after basketball. Because what's the point? Like, Scott Foster's gotten his ass kicked in these extender series spots this postseason. Yeah. If he's not going to force a Game 5 in the only game on TV tonight, then what's the point? He might have to join Angel Hernandez on vacation. Just saying.
So the next game would be, what's today? Tuesday, so it'll be on Thursday then, and then Thursday would probably go to Saturday night if Minnesota wins. But
yeah, and as Prince said, if Dallas wins, then I believe we're off for about 9 days. So
yeah, we'll be next Thursday.
Yeah, it's going to be a WNBA podcast for about a week and a half. So just prepare yourself if Dallas wins.
All right, we'll be back later this week. We'll figure it out the schedule because if we don't have games, but we'll try to figure something out. So yeah, just stay tuned because this is a time of season where the schedule just get a little wonky. So again, great reminder to be subscribed to the YouTube channel here on the NBA Gambling Podcast, but also the guys do go live here for WNBA. So join them as well for the WNBA with Scott and Terrell. And you can also follow us on Twitter at SGPN NBA. to support the podcast here as well. All right, we'll talk to you guys down the road here. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.